Hey everyone, so Wave 1 of the PTU just went live, so I wanted to check it out and make a quick video about some of the new features. Again, I think they're selling this patch a bit short with what they have listed on the roadmap, so I wanted to talk about some of the new stuff in here that's pretty exciting and that I haven't seen too much about. So feel free to check it out yourself because there's definitely more than what I'm going to cover here, but I just wanted to share some of the highlights. I also have the patch notes linked below if you want a more detailed overview of the changes. Let's get started by taking a look at the all-new Refinery decks. So these are another expansion that's been added on to a few major space stations. I'm not sure of the whole list of stations that got them, but the one that I've been checking out here is CRU L1, but I know there's a few others. Unlike cargo decks though, these are being added in all ready to go with gameplay as well. This is exciting for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think refining will be a really good addition to mining, because right now, at least with a prospector, you pretty much only want to be mining Quantanium, since everything else is so worthless in comparison. From what I've seen so far, refining makes it so that there is some reason to mine other things as well, which I think is good. What's the point of having all sorts of ores in the game if most of them are just different names for junk? Another plus to this is that you have a mining kiosk at a lot more major stations now, which means you can sell things that you mine there, even if you don't feel like refining them. Before, you were limited to selling at planetary landing zones, and Grimhex and Port Olisar. These were kind of inconvenient though, because it takes forever to land and ride the train to where you're going to find the mining kiosk in the cities, which takes a lot of time and significantly cuts into your profits. And Grimhex and Port Olisar are some of the most hostile stations in the game, so there was a good chance of someone messing with you as you went to sell at either of those locations. It also doesn't help that with Quantanium's limited timer, you're pretty much forced into selling it at Port Olisar or Grimhex if you didn't want to have your ship blow up. So miners were pretty much relegated to those areas, meaning that people who wanted to mess with miners knew exactly where to find them. So having different places to sell ores is a very welcome addition, and besides all the benefits of not having to deal with the stuff that I was just talking about, you also can have some more variety in the locations you mine in, which is nice, because mining in the same spot all the time can definitely get stale. With regards to how refining works, I'm going to be doing a more detailed video for sure in the future, because I'm not entirely sure on all the details yet, and then I also want to update all my mining guides in general. With all of the changes related to mining, from the new UI, to the new options of places to mine, to the new potential worth of refined materials, I think it's going to be a very different experience in 3.12. So starting with this new UI, it's definitely interesting, and the reason they made this change was to make it so that you could see your speed and stuff, even while you were in mining mode. I do think the interface looks cooler, and I like all the information that it gives you, while still being pretty organized. You even get to see what's in your cargo and in what percentage it's in there, which is definitely a nice feature. The only thing I don't like is how small the numbers for mass and composition are when you're scanning a rock, but I'm sure I'll get used to it as I use it more. So I gathered up a variety of ores just because I wanted to have some different stuff to look at, and then here's a quick look at the interface for queuing a refinery job. So it seems like there's quite a few options here, and you can choose a different refining process for each ore, or you can lump them all into the same process. I'm not sure what the pros and cons are to each process, or if they're each suited to a different type of material, so it'll definitely be interesting to see what the differences between them are, and I'll definitely be looking at that in the future. But on a very basic level, it seems like you just select the refining process type, which of your ores you want to refine, and then you pay a small fee. Mine was like 3,000 credits here for all of this ore. It does take a while though. Mine was about 50 minutes in this case, but the task will persist through 30Ks, which is very good, and you even get a notification in game for it when it's done. But yeah, I just refined everything from my prospector load that you saw earlier, and it seemed like I was able to refine everything except for the borase. And then once the refining task is done, it looks like the refined ore is just treated as regular cargo afterwards, and you have to pick a ship to load it onto and then take it somewhere to sell it. So in this case, I loaded everything onto my Caterpillar. I'm not sure if this is going to be the best way to do it, because I haven't had a lot of time to test things, but from what I could tell, you have to take this stuff somewhere that would normally accept these commodities, because they aren't treated as minables anymore once you refine them. So I wasn't able to sell it at CRU L1, and I also wasn't able to load the ores back onto my prospector. So this could be an issue if you don't have a hauler. So unless I'm missing something, this is going to be an interesting workflow, because you can bring back materials, then refine a bunch of loads, and then put them all into one cargo ship to sell, or you could do just one load at a time. I think it is going to end up being better though to take a lot of loads with you at a time so that you cut down on your travel times, but in this case I just took what I got from that refining job and brought it on over to Hurston to be able to sell everything there, and this is how much I got for it. So I'm not sure how much this stuff would have sold for unrefined because I was stupid and didn't look at the panel beforehand. So it's hard for me to judge how worth it the extra time it takes to refine the ores and then take them somewhere is. But I also think that my results would be better if I knew more about what the different types of refining did so that I could maximize my output. Anyway, it's definitely interesting, and it makes the verse seem a lot more realistic when you're involved in multiple legs of an industrial process like this, because you go from mining the raw ore, then refining it, and then taking it somewhere to sell it. Eventually everything in Star Citizen is going to work together like this, and that's really exciting. Also, another small change that I think is going to be a big deal is that here in the store, in the refinery deck, you can now rent the prospector for half of what it used to cost, and also you can rent the rock. I really like these changes because it means it's way easier to get up in mining without much investment. If you want to go mining in a rock, it's under 40,000 credits because you can rent a cutlass and rent a rock and go do that. Or if you want to go prospector mining, it's only 20,000 credits. But yeah, overall I'm really excited to see how refining changes mining as a whole, and hopefully it helps some of the issues mining had in 3.11 and before, like the rental prospector being a pain to use because you were so limited in what you could mine. I'm excited to dive into all the possibilities, so be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss that video when I make it. Moving on, thankfully for those of you who don't enjoy mining, 3.12 seems like it's added a good amount of stuff to combat missions with this new reputation system. So this is one of the things that was not highlighted that well on the roadmap, because I was definitely surprised to see it when I first saw it on some leaked patch notes. So basically the gist of this change is that reputation is now persistent, so it should persist between patches unlike before, and it's now a lot more important in determining what missions you have access to. What I'm most excited about is that they supposedly have added a lot of higher difficulty missions, although I'm not exactly sure what these will be since I haven't had time to do enough missions to get my reputation up to the level to be able to do them. But going off of what they said on Star Citizen Live, we do know that you'll be able to fight an Idris because they wanted it to be an option to go against one as a good guy, as well as it being part of the response to high crime stat criminals, so both types of players get a chance to try to dodge that railgun and take out the ship. And then in terms of how your reputation changes, it changes every time you take a mission from a mission giver or a bounty hunting organization. So even doing something like accepting a mission and then abandoning it should negatively affect your reputation. I think the mission givers are all separate from each other. I think they've said that the bounties are all somewhat connected, even across different planets. So like Crusader versus Hurston bounties should all have some effect on your overall bounty hunting reputation. So this is definitely exciting, and I'm hoping that the level of difficulty and reward scales nicely to actually justify some multi-crew, or at least multi-ship gameplay. I just bought a hammerhead in game, and I hope I'm going to get to use it. It does seem like it takes a while to start unlocking the higher tier stuff though, because I did like 5 or 6 bounties for Hurston and was still only getting the very low risk target ones. So it's a good thing that your reputation is now a bit more persistent. But at the very least, from what I've done so far, there's a ton more variation in the enemies you face, which is great, because I was getting pretty tired of only blowing up cutlasses and buccaneers. But yeah, I'll be making a more in-depth video about this stuff later as well. While checking out some of these missions though, I did take the chance to try out the Constellation because they had mentioned it would get some flight model tweaks for 3.12, and I am a bit of a fan of the Constellation. It does seem to handle a bit better than it did before, but I still wouldn't call it nimble, and I think they could go a bit farther with the improvements. It's hard to know though, because if it's too maneuverable, it's going to be a real beast with all the firepower it has, so I can see why they didn't crank it up too much. But at least this is a step in the right direction to having a much less broken Connie. I'm just waiting on those signed distance field shields. Also, speaking of other changes, I flew the Star Runner around a lot when I was checking out some of this stuff, and the fuel consumption seems to be a lot more reasonable, but it's still really expensive to fill up. I think I remember seeing a price of 2,000 Alpha UEC to fill up from 85% fuel left, and that seems to be a bit much to me. I'm all for having a cost to run ships, but at a certain point it's just not a very fun mechanic to have to worry about conserving your fuel, because you're not going to even break even on the mission that you're doing. It is a game after all, so I do hope they reconsider their fix for this ship. One small item that's going to make a big difference in how the game is played is the new tractor beam attachment for the multi-tool. So this is another attachment that you can swap into the multi-tool, just like the mining one or laser cutter one, but it lets you pick up some pretty big objects. I didn't get to test this, but you should be able to carry whole 1 SCU cargo containers now, and this is a bigger change than you'd think, because it means that cargo from destroyed ships will now spawn in a manageable size, rather than the tiny boxes that they've tried to have for a while. So whether or not you find your cargo from an existing wreck, or you make your own wreck to grab cargo from, this is going to be a really nice item to have. Its other cool feature though is that it kind of works like a grappling hook in EVA, just like they've shown in the Inside Star Citizens. I did notice that the EVA suit does seem to be a little bit weaker now though, so if you do a lot of EVAing, you'll probably want to have one of these. But it's also a whole lot of fun, as long as you don't smack into whatever you're tractoring to, so that's not a bad thing. One thing I do possibly see being an issue is that it doesn't seem like there's a way to swap out the battery in the multi-tool, so when it's out, it's out. This isn't that big of a deal though, because they're pretty cheap at like 400 alpha UEC each, and right now it seems like they've disabled it from even discharging at all, so it doesn't seem like it's going to run out unless they change that. But when they do, I guess it's better to just have to throw out the whole thing than have the extra complication of having a battery slot on the multi-tool and all the glitches that might come along with that. Another small change that I wanted to highlight is this cool new updated main menu and loading screen. So the background is now a little short loop of a station with the new gas clouds, and it also has a good view of the exterior of the refineries. It's a nice little showcase of some of the standout features of 3.12. Continuing with the small changes, there's now some little markers on ships to show you where the entrance is. Now on a ship like the Star Runner here, this isn't too big of a deal to find on your own, but I play this game a lot, and I still struggle to find some entrances, especially the side entrances on the Reclaimer. For newer players though, this is definitely a nice feature to have. One feature I was actually happy to see removed was the landing splines at Area 18 in Lorville. Now I do think the idea wasn't too bad, but the way that they were implemented previously was not great. They wouldn't really line up with your approach most of the time, so sometimes you'd have to even move away from the landing zone and then back in to line up with the landing splines. And then also the fact that your ship got blown up if you didn't follow them was pretty over the top. So I'm sure that they'll have a system to replace it eventually, because it does seem like they do want to control player traffic, but for now you just don't have to worry about it at all, which is nice because it's a lot less lethal to take off from Area 18 or Lowerville with these things gone. One change that I know we've all been excitedly waiting for is the elevator panel updates. Now I do joke a bit just because of how long this has been delayed, but with them in game now it's actually a pretty nice quality of life change. This new UI should give you a lot more information about where you are and where the elevator is than it did before, because before you just had a button to press and pretty much no information about whether the elevator was working or not. These new ones even have a nice little sound for the button press, so this is another small change but still a welcome one. And then last but not least, I wanted to just throw in here that the Talon is ready for 3.12, but it's only available to owners in the PTU, so I wasn't personally able to check it out or fly it, but I've watched some other people's videos on it, and it looks like it's going to be another nice option for the light fighter category. And it's a pretty cool looking ship, if you're into that Teveran design. So that's all I have for this video. I didn't go too in depth on anything, but I wanted to try to get this out somewhat quickly and cover most of the main things that are in this update. So be sure to be subscribed if you don't want to miss my more detailed follow-up videos on stuff like the Refinery gameplay, and please leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.